morning. Welcome to Health Talk here on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM KXBX. Paul Thomas and Bill Kearney in the studio with you on a Wednesday before Christmas. And
ho, ho, ho.
Ho, ho. You're you're coming down with a little something at the worst possible time.
Well, I think I just love live radio. What, it's been 30 years that we've been doing this.
Yeah.
And
Been a while.
I got this cough and over the weekend, and I'm trying to get over it, but I've just I got home last night after work, and I went to bed at 7 o'clock. I slept till 7 o'clock this morning, and but I still was doing some coughing, so my hopes was that I would go slow and get through this without a problem, but and maybe we will. You know,
maybe.
You never know.
Yeah.
You know, it's Christmas, so
I know. Here we are.
We had to be here, and we want to be here for a show before Christmas, like Thanksgiving. Or we don't have the turkey gobbling this year.
No, I was looking to see if I had some ho-ho-hos here. I think I might have a, I don't know. Yeah, I have to listen. You know, is this a ho-ho-ho? I don't know. California? No, that's not a ho-ho-ho, so I'll see what I can find.
Did you get to see Santa Claus this year? Or?
You know, it was really funny. We went to Ukiah on Saturday, and we stopped by the Walmart, and I always call it the Walmart. I don't know why. We stopped by the Walmart, and there was a guy in there dressed up like Santa Claus.
Uh-huh.
And I said to Matthew, you know, and he's 9, so his days of belief are gone. But I said, hey, you know, look out, there's Santa Claus. And Matthew was like, we got to get the heck out of here. I don't want to be near that guy. You know?
Really?
Oh, yeah. And every time we come around, out of an aisle, the guy was there, and Matthew would be like, let's get out of here. That's funny.
Well, I was talking to Carlos at Bruno's. He had Santa Claus there on Saturday. He saw 147 kids.
Wow, that's amazing.
We had him at our place a couple of weeks ago on a Wednesday, and I think we had 40. But that was in the middle of the week. So anyway, Santa's going to be busy. It's almost cold enough to snow, although
it's really cold at night, into the mid-20s.
Boy, that wind last night was...
Yeah,
I have an outdoor kitchen, and I have a barbecue out there with a big maul on top of it, a splitting maul.
Yeah.
It blew that off of my barbecue.
Oh, wow.
To hold the cover on. I don't know where the cover is. It's out there someplace. But
wow.
Anyway, a little chill in the air is going to help people get in the mood. I guess it's kind of at an inconvenient time, I guess, for Christmas because it's on a Monday, I believe, right? It
is on a Monday this year, which for some of us means we get a 3-day weekend.
Yeah, so I guess
I actually get I think it's like an 11-day weekend or 12-day weekend because I'm off next week. We'll still do the show. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
We'll come in and do the show. But I'm taking next week off. And then we've got the 3-day weekend for New Year's weekend after that as well.
That's right. Well, I will take the one after that because the 3 of us are getting together and renting a place over on Bodega Bay for New Year's. Because our Christmas, our house looks like somebody threw up Christmas. I thought it was only 9 Christmas trees. It's 10.
It's 10 now. Well, you needed an even number.
I came home last night and I see the whole kitchen table and the stove full of Christmas decorations.
Yeah.
I said, what's that for? Well, the new deck. You have to decorate the new deck. Now, this looks out over the lake. There's no going to be
nobody going to see it.
We're up high enough that even if the guy was at our beach, he couldn't see a thing.
Yeah.
But we're there just in case the deer or antelope or the bear want to see it. We're going to have it all decorated. So my wonderful wife, Christmas is her holiday, and our Christmas is going to be kind of like yours. It's going to be split up with one group of family comes down Friday and Saturday, and then another one Sunday night, and then Monday morning. And then I think everybody goes back to work on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting for my family because Celia, my wife's birthday is Christmas Eve. So we always, have a birthday thing on Christmas Eve and then have Christmas on Christmas Day. And so I think that I don't know that we're going to have anybody over actually on Christmas Day this year. You know, we're having the daughter and the grandson and the fiance and all that up today, and they're going to be here for a couple days. But it's just going to be, you know, the small family gathering on Christmas. So that's how it is for us this year.
Are you doing turkey or?
We're doing turkey today.
Oh.
Yeah, we got the turkey. In fact, she should be putting it in the oven here pretty soon. It's a 21-pounder.
Wow.
So it's pretty decent size, but, you know, we got it. And I said, you know, we might as well do it when the kids come up. I mean, when are we ever going to eat a 21-pound turkey?
Yeah.
Just us, you know, the four of us that live at home. So now we'll get a couple of extra mouths and we'll do turkey.
You're making me hungry.
I know. I think Christmas Day we're going to do a ham, and Christmas Eve on Celia's birthday we're doing lobster and crab.
Wow.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I know. I'm getting hungry too, just thinking about it.
You know, I didn't eat breakfast this morning. I went to bed before dinner, and these cough lozenges just aren't satisfying my appetite. But we're gonna have prime rib.
Yeah, we thought about doing prime rib. We just felt there wasn't enough people with just the four of us to do like a prime rib. So.
Well, you know, we did Thanksgiving. We did a 24-pound turkey, and there were only four of us. We thought there were going to be 12. So,
but and how long did the turkey last after Thanksgiving?
A long time. We had contractors over, and they all went home with bags full
of turkey.
And I don't think we even, you know, then we made turkey soup. And,
I already know what's happening here over the next few days. Turkey sandwiches, you know, turkey enchiladas, turkey soup. Yeah, I already foresee that.
And I don't know if turkey's still inexpensive, but usually this time of year it's really a good deal.
It is a good deal. That's why, you know, that's why I got one. Even though we knew we were going to, you know, out of the area for Thanksgiving, I went and bought one anyway because the deal was so good, you know, and we just kept it in the freezer and pulled it out this weekend and let it thaw for. I think we put it in the fridge Sunday, so it takes a little while to thaw those things out.
You know, I was just looking at some of my information there, and I'll get back on health stuff in a minute, but I had, for Thanksgiving, I don't know if I ever went over it, was you can cook a turkey frozen. Did we ever talk about that?
You did talk about that, yeah. That was, I had never thought about that, yeah.
1.5 times more than, longer than you normally would. But I think I'd rather do the precaution and...
and make sure it's defrosted and, you know.
Well, we're into flu season now, and we're almost out of flu vaccine. So if you didn't get it, you need to get it soon. And I'm not sure how much longer we're going to be able to get it. But it's, you know, the effective rate is only 10% of the flu vaccine this year. So that means that 90% of that isn't viable because it mutates when it comes. From Australia, they start, and they had a terrible flu season, and then the South is really bad. And I think Georgia and another southern state and California are the three worst states for the flu this year so far. So it's a miserable thing when you get it. You get a fever, and you hope that it goes away quickly. And if the symptoms last longer than 7 days, then you probably have something else going on there. After we did our radio show on Thursday, I had an appointment in Ukiah, and I got a call from my wife saying that she needed to get into the doctor. She couldn't breathe very well, and had so much mucus in her lungs that her lungs weren't filling up full of air. And that becomes a serious thing when that happens, so you can't anticipate. Even at that, they did not want to give her an antibiotic. Flu and colds are viral rather than bacterial most of the time, and unless you get a secondary infection, the antibiotics really don't do any good, and they want, of course, people are coming in with symptoms right now to their physicians' offices and clinics, and they want to get an antibiotic to make them feel better. And it's kind of confusing. I had a call yesterday from a lady that the doctor had written for a Z-Pak, and a Z-Pak is the brand name of azithromycin. When it first came out, there wasn't a generic azithromycin, and it was called Z-Pak. Well, now doctors just write for Z-Pak, expecting only, and the patient was concerned that she didn't get the brand name, and I said, you know, the insurance companies won't pay for the brand name anymore. They'll only pay for the generic. It's exactly the same thing, but that's not clarified when you're used to, and then it has a myosin after it, and the patient thought perhaps that she might be allergic to this drug because erythromycin she was allergic to, but there isn't a similarity as far as the chemical part that would cause the allergy, which brings me up to the point about flu vaccine. The people who were on flu vaccine, that were taking flu vaccine and did take it or refused to take it because they had an egg allergy, that no longer is so. The egg allergy is low enough in sensitivity from getting the shot that you don't need to worry about the sensitivity that you may or may not have for eggs. So there isn't any reason to avoid the flu vaccine if you have an egg allergy. So lots of reasons that people don't want to get flu vaccines, and you know, some people are coming in this week already thinking that they should have got it earlier, and they probably should have. And I had a couple of patients that were on their way to southern Texas, and they were leaving this morning, and they wanted to make sure that they were covered if they got flu vaccine yesterday. Well, there's no way that you're going to be covered for about 10 days. So she said, well, it's not going to be any good in Texas. And I said, well, it'll be good, but you'll have to build up an immunity, and by the time you come back, you'll probably have the immunity, but not while you're there. So that's the deal with any kind of a vaccine. It takes it a while to activate. We also have a lot of people now that are getting Zostavax. It's the end of the year, and it's for shingles, and a lot of people are under the concept that if they're around somebody that has shingles, they can get the shingles. The shingles is a disease, an immune disease, that the nerve endings, you get a rash like poison oak or an allergic reaction, and because you've had chicken pox at some time when you were younger, that virus becomes dormant in your system, meaning it's not active. And then at some time, and the more you age, the more likely you are to get shingles. And so the older you are, the more chance you have of that virus activating. And when it does, you can have extreme pain from all of those nerve endings come out of the surface of your skin. Well, the vaccine that's out now, Zostavax, is about 50 to 60% effective, but it's certainly better than not getting anything. And the new vaccine that we've been talking about came out a couple of weeks ago. After our radio show last week, I got the shot. I took the
Oh, that's right. You were gonna test it. And how did that go?
And I had a sore arm, but it wasn't anything that was going to impinge me working or anything. I thought maybe it would. Yeah, I'm trying to turn it off.
I'm like pushing buttons, going, wait, where's that coming from?
There it goes.
All right.
Anyway,
so how did it go?
So I had a sore arm. I got it as soon as I got back around 11:30, and nothing happened all day long. And by the evening, around 7 or 8 o'clock, I started to get a little sore. And the next day, my arm was relatively sore, a lot more than it would be with the flu shot. But then it went away. I had no other symptoms. And the new shingles vaccine, you get it intramuscular instead of subcutaneously under the skin, and then you have to get a second shot.
So does that mean they give it to you in a different part of your body, or?
Yeah, they give it to you like a flu shot. They give it to you.
In your arm?
The sub-Q we give it to the back of your arm, just under the skin. The IM we give right in the front of the arm, the forearm, and then in 2 to 6 months we give a second shot, and then that's 97% effective, opposed to 50% effective. So tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, I've got a national seminar. It's only 20 minutes about the new vaccine and if insurance companies will pay for it. Right now, they aren't paying for it. And any kind of side effects or things you have to be concerned about. If you need prior authorizations, what you need to do. So we'll have more information on that next week. So sometimes you have so much information on the internet and from news media, you don't have any time to talk about what's really going on. And one of the things that interested me Sunday night, 60 Minutes is on. Not my favorite channel, but it's on anyway, and I always listen to it because they said there was going to be something on opiates. About a month ago, there was a program on 60 Minutes about the three wholesalers, Amerisource, McKesson, and Cardinal, about their distribution channels and getting opiates out into the pharmacies, and that a lot of it was being deterred, and they were not checking to make sure that those were real pharmacies they were going to. And of course, as a pharmacist, if you're a legal pharmacist and you're not dealing in the black market, we can't fill a prescription for any kind of a medication that we don't have a prescription for, except for immunizations and birth control pills. We can actually prescribe those. So these were fake pharmacies, or pharmacies that existed with people, unethical pharmacists and physicians that were writing the prescriptions. And the worst wholesaler involved was McKesson Robbins, or McKesson. They had lost most of their attorneys from the DEA. They had gone to work for Big Pharma, and they had a case on McKesson that showed them not paying attention after they'd been warned several times and paid a substantial sum for not paying attention to where these drugs were going. And then they followed up on that survey and found out they still weren't. And so they had set up, their attorneys were taking them into court. They were going to put in prison the CEO of McKesson, fine them $150 billion.
Wow.
And when it got to the courts, they were not penalized at all. The CEOs weren't, and it was $150 million, which they make that in a day. And this person from the DEA was really upset because they'd spent time and efforts and had them clear as could be about channeling opiates into the system that they knew better than to do. And it was a alarming report to hear because it puts a red flag on all pharmacy as far as I'm concerned, from the most ethical profession to one of the most unethical professions at the distribution level and at the big pharma level. As the DEA person said, it was all about money. It was all about the profit line. Didn't make any difference how many people were killed, how many people were injured, how many people were overdosed, as long as they could sell more hydrocodone and oxycodone. Pretty sad that that has to happen, and it has you wondering about our political system as a whole. No matter what side of the aisle you sit on, how much do these people look the other way if Big Pharma, the big pharmaceutical companies, pay them and their lobbyists to keep them out of jail? I know it's done all the time in the political system, but to this, the number one epidemic in the country is opiate overdose. And I just got an article this morning which really surprised me, and it was about tramadol. Now, we know when the hydrocodone and the oxycodone and the MS-Contin and the OxyContin and all those had a red flag alert, a lot of physicians went to tramadol. Tramadol is a synthetic opiate, and I, as one, even says, why would they be reluctant to change you from oxycodone to tramadol in regular doses? And a lot of physicians, instead of writing for OxyContin or hydrocodone or Norco or one of those would write for tramadol. But I saw this article, and I had to look it up because I wasn't sure that there was good information on it. And it was about an illegal trade and growing abuse of tramadol, which is a synthetic opiate, that are destabilizing part of West Africa when it's fueling terror groups and providing revenue for ISIS. UN officials say security experts are finding all kinds of tramadol in soldiers when they capture them. They are taking it to, it reminds me of World War II when Hitler had everybody on amphetamines. It's less stigmatized than heroin or other illegal drugs because it's a prescription medication that can be assessed and transported more easily. It isn't a Schedule II, it's a Schedule III. Synthetic opiate traffic is a huge new revenue for ISIS affiliates. If you think of Al Capone and the illegal alcohol back in the 30s, a national security and military analyst and president of the consulting firm for ISIS said this was a desperate make money off synthetic opiates trafficking to stay in the terrorism business. West Africa is becoming a desired market for such terror groups. If the U.S. military and coalition forces don't work to break it up, they will face flourishing ISIS-related groups in West Africa, and which includes parts of Mali, Niger, as well as Sudan. And you know we're having all kinds of trouble in those places right now. The tramadol can produce effects similar to other opiate medications, such as morphine and oxycodone, resulting in a high. It can work as a physical and emotional pain reliever, and is attractive to people experiencing loss or trauma. And that's kind of what Hitler did in World War II with amphetamines. He got everybody all jazzed up on a central nervous system stimulant to go to war, and they had no fear. This drug originates from South Asia before organized crime networks struggled to get it in parts of Africa. As a result, it's affecting security as well as in Africa and other regions such as the Middle East. It's regularly found in the pockets of suspects arrested in terrorism who have committed suicidal attacks. Raises the question of who provides the tablets to the fighters from Boko Haram and all of the country, including boys and girls preparing to commit suicide bombings. The dosage usually is 4 to 5 times higher than the recommended dose that can produce strong health risks to the people taking it. More than 3 tons of the drug were seized yearly in Saharan Africa. World Drug Report is up from 300 kilograms 4 years ago to 3 tons. So just another way to divert drugs that are legal drugs and make them illegal drugs, and all for a profit motive. For this is for a terrorist group. So very discouraging in my profession to see the abuse of some of these things when it's made for a good purpose. And we really, when opiates first came out, it was for terminal people who had chronic pain and unretractable pain, and it's overwhelmed everybody as far as an epidemic goes, and it's right next door to you if you don't think it is. With all the colds and stuff going around right now, we get a lot of people that come in and want some sort of a cough suppressant or a cold remedy for a child. And there's a big determinant of prescribing and recommending over-the-counter cough syrups and cold remedies for kids younger than 12 years old. And we know the cold season is here, and if you have children, you know when they're suffering, you hate to see them suffering, and you don't want to see them suffering any more than they have to. And we're used to going into our pharmacists and saying, what do you have for a child? And there really isn't anything. We used to determine a child would take medication that adult would take, only you would take their body weight and halve the dose or two-thirds the dose or whatever it had to make up for how much per pound that you would have of the medication that got into an adult. Well, we found out that children don't metabolize drugs the same way because their metabolism isn't complete. Their central nervous system, their gastrointestinal nervous system is not completely whole yet. And so it may seem that children are continuously sick, but they are. They just go from daycare to another place and then another place and maybe 3 or 4 places, and we certainly want all children to feel better, and we naturally want to help. And frequently we use the over-the-counter drugs, and they have never done any studies on kids, on pediatric patients, when it comes to drugs. When treating children with over-the-counter prescriptions drugs, it's important to understand that they differ significantly from our population and drug effects and how effective the drug are. So over the past 30 years, we've learned much more about pediatric pharmacology. We also were talking last week about gender differences when it comes to medication. And we were talking about the man flu last week, Paul, where we said, you know, when you and I
real
get
thing.
When you and I get the flu,
Yeah.
It's much different because
been scientifically proven now.
Females have estradiol, which protects their immune system. We have testosterone, which doesn't. And so we could get a lot sicker. Not that we do, but we certainly think we do, and we may.
Sure.
So there are differences in genders when it comes to, and there's differences in ages. So based on the assumption that health practitioners often only reduce the amount of drug to a child based on a proportion of the child's body weight, that we probably were overdosing those kids. The difference, the effectiveness of over-the-counter cough and cold products, active ingredient demonstrated in adult studies were assumed to be similar in children, but we learned that continuing to learn that the strategy is not accurate and the medicine may be dangerous. And where we know it really is dangerous is with narcotics, with codeine. We used to give them a cough syrup with codeine. Codeine's metabolized to morphine in the system. Morphine affects the respiratory system, your ability to breathe. A safe and effective drug isn't one that's converted to morphine in a child. Often it develops into an overdose, and we treated over-the-counter medications as if they were different than prescription drugs, but the active ingredients in over-the-counter products are evaluated and approved by categories such as cough meds and decongestants. Pediatric over-the-counter cough and products have been significantly excuse me.
There's
the old cough.
Yeah.
Anyway, they've been changed over the years, and they're reviewing the safety and effectiveness of drugs in kids right now. So if they're younger than 2 years old, we don't give them anything. The Consumer Health Products Association announced that products would be labeled not for use in children younger than 4 years old, and this remains the current status on pediatric labeling for over-the-counter cough problems and cold products. In addition, those ingredients are actually ineffective in reducing cold symptoms in kids. We have published clinical reports now that prove that. So although several doses of over-the-counter products are unlikely to be toxic, they've described the scenarios where the product were used inappropriately by administration of too large a dose. We even had that happening with acetaminophen. We had acetaminophen drops, which was 80 milligrams, I believe, a cc, and we had 80 milligrams cough syrup, which we would give by the teaspoonful. which I believe was 150 milligrams per teaspoonful. So we would often mistake these two and give them way more than what they needed. So there's just a word of caution in doing this. And those recent studies that have significantly altered the use of codeine is pretty significant. And we've learned in recent years that because it's metabolized differently, has little pharmacological activity that's really going to help what we're giving it to them for. But the liver chemically alters it to the active form of morphine, and of course we know how dangerous morphine is. It's been used for, the Tylenol and codeine has been used for treating pain in children and coughs and adults. So more than 20 cases of fatal respiratory depression have been documented in infants and children using codeine. And administering codeine to infants and children, its use for all purposes in children and cough and pain needs to be limited or stopped completely. So as everything else that we're talking about in healthcare changes, this too is changing, and we still have those products on the shelf. You can still walk in and ask somebody, where is the stuff for, where's the decongestant for kids? Where is the pain medication for kids? Just on the reverse of that, yesterday we had an adult that was prescribed ibuprofen in the pediatric dose because they couldn't swallow pills, and most ibuprofen are fairly decent size. And so the clerk asked me, is this a correct prescription because it's for an adult? And I says yes, because they probably can't swallow a pill, and that was certainly the case. So when you see things that are different than what you truly imagined them being, and you're not sure if the medication is for that or not, you need to question it, even if it's over the counter. And one of the things we see now is because of oxycodone and Vicodin and Percocet all being prescribed, not being prescribed nearly as much as possible, if any, people are now combining over-the-counter medications together, thinking they'll get more for their buck. And one of the things we're seeing them use are mixing aspirin and ibuprofen. And when I saw this article this morning, I thought, well, why would we do that? Well, number one, these are both what we call non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. Aspirin is probably the strongest non-steroidal anti-inflammatory there is on the market, including Celebrex and Vioxx that was taken off the market. And Aleve or ibuprofen is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory too. And two things happen when you combine the two of these. And I'll tell you an instance where I did just that, and with this onset of whatever condition I have right now, you develop a terrible headache from it. And I take a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory every day for arthritis called Celebrex. But that doesn't help my headache, so I ended up taking a couple of aspirin to get rid of the headache, which was effective. And what this article is saying is don't take them routinely all the time, because they're both members of the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory group. They both have a tendency to thin the intestinal lining of the stomach and thin the blood. And just like a brother and sister are more similar to each other than to children of the same age, down the street, drugs can be chemically similar and have similar but not identical actions on the body. Aspirin and ibuprofen are brother and sister drugs, and they both can cause stomach bleeding, which can be life-threatening. So taking both of them together at the same time doesn't make sense, especially since it's just doubling the dose of aspirin. This does not improve the therapeutic effects of relieving the pain, but greatly increase the risks of side effects such as bleeding. Now, The other thing that happens is these two compete for the same cell site. So whenever you have two drugs that are competing for the same cell to do the same thing, you reduce the effectiveness of both of those drugs. So one of those drugs itself would have a better job of relieving your pain than both of them together, if it was the same pain that you're trying to get rid of. And I know that becomes confusing, but when you're taking a blood pressure medication, and one is a beta blocker like metoprolol or atenolol, and one is a diuretic like Maxide or hydrochlorothiazide, they aren't diffusing the effectiveness of either one of the drugs because they both work on a different part of the human body. The beta blocker, is kind of a tranquilizer for the heart. It stabilizes the heartbeat. The heart pumps more regularly with the same amount of volume. The Maxide or hydrochlorothiazide is a water pill that takes the pressure off the outside of a blood vessel and expands it so the heart doesn't have to work so hard to pump it through. But with ibuprofen and aspirin, or ibuprofen and naproxen together, or any two non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, they're working on the same process. They're doing the same thing to make the drug effective. And so that's why the side effects are greater than the benefit of taking it. Same way with diabetic drugs. You could be taking insulin, and you could be taking an oral diabeta, or one of the drugs that's used to increase the amount of insulin produced by your pancreas. And they both work differently. One is actually putting insulin into your system. The other one is making your pancreas produce more insulin. So here you have two things that are working in conjunction with each other. They're making it more effective instead of working against each other. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about 10 health questions that had you Googling this year.
As we begin another year, we're going to have to make many choices in our lives. With the economy still struggling, we all have decisions to make relating to our health. My name is Bill Kearney, owner of Northlake Medical Pharmacies. Healthcare is one of the many items that will be changing again this year. At Northlake Medical Pharmacies, we're striving to give you more for your dollar. We're still selling and renting durable medical equipment, including lift chairs, walkers, wheelchairs, and transport chairs. To help you with your healthcare decisions, we have qualified healthcare professionals that will be able to answer your questions. We would like to help you whether you need a prescription for a medication, a wheelchair or walker, an immunization to prevent a disease, or simply regular drugs, gifts, and sundries. Northlake Medical Pharmacies is the place to shop. Northlake Medical Pharmacies, with 2 locations for you, at Hill Road next to Sutter Lakeside Hospital and in front of the Bruno Shops Mart on Lakeport Boulevard.
This is the Caltrans Road Information Bulletin for Lake and Mendocino County State Highways for the week beginning Friday, December 15th. In Lake County, on Route 175 near Arroyo Vista Road, weekdays you might see 5-minute delays. In Mendocino County, on Route 20 near Road 260, weekdays expect 5-minute delays. On Highway 101 from Ridgewood Ranch Road to just south of the Dora Creek Bridge, expect some stops. On 162 west of Punkenny, weekdays expect 10-minute delays. And on 175 near the Lake County line, expect 10-minute delays. That wraps up the Caltrans Road Information Bulletin for Lake and Mendocino County State Highways. Please remember to check your route before you go online via QuickMap or by calling 1-800-GAS-ROAD. Please be safe out there and drive for the conditions on the road. You can like us on Facebook for more updates and info on the type of work we're doing. That's Caltrans District 1.
Lakeport Disposal would like to announce their holiday schedule. Monday the 25th, commercial business will be picked up on Tuesday the 26th. All residential customers will be picked up on regularly scheduled days. The New Year's schedule, Monday the 1st, commercial businesses will be picked up on Tuesday the 2nd. And all residential customers will be picked up on regularly scheduled days. From all the folks at Lakeport Disposal, they'd like to wish everyone a happy holidays.
raising your family, tending to your animals, growing your own produce, preparing for the seasons, living the country life. Hi, I'm Jody Henke, host of Living the Country Life. Catch me every Monday through Friday at 9:35 a.m. and 4:35 p.m. for ideas and inspiration for your place in the country. That's Living the Country Life here on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM KXBS.
We bring the community closer together, supporting business in every way. We're helping make your dreams come true, working hard for you.
The Lake County Chamber of Commerce would like to recognize their member of the month, Tom Lincoln, from Lincoln Levitt Insurance Agency. Lincoln Levitt Insurance Agency insures hundreds of local and out-of-county businesses, providing such coverage as fire liability, business auto, workers' comp, umbrella liability, director and officer liability, and group benefits. It also provides a full line of insurance products to local farmers and agribusiness owners. To request an insurance review, Tom and his staff are located at 650 North Main Street in Lakeport. They can be contacted at 263-7162 or through the website at lincolnlevitt.com.
Lake County Chamber of Commerce, we're steady and strong, help us shape the future.
All righty, Bill, we're back.
Well, you know, I don't know if you ever use Google, Paul, do you?
Every day.
I do too.
Yeah, I have to.
And mostly I use it for health questions, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's for my name. Do you know who I am? And you know, or who is that? You're supposed to ask in the little box.
What, the Siri or
Siri
the,
or the
I
other
don't
one?
know. Yeah.
Sometimes I ask my wife. But anyway, there was kind of
where am I? Who am I?
Yeah, there was a lot of questions last year because of things that were related to health. One of the questions was, what is the ketogenic diet? You see that on the internet all the time. This is how everybody loses weight. Those searches quadrupled in Google this past year. It involves eating more healthy fats and less carbohydrates in order to force the body to burn fat. It's been seen a recent rise in popularity because it actually started back in the 1920s. It was developed for people with epilepsy, and it was observed that while they were fasting, they had less seizures. So they started using it for options in 2008. This year, many people were curious about opiates and wanted to know what they were. A simple thing, they're a narcotic that are developed from the opium poppy and very highly addicted, used for pain. Now you see them on the street, linked with fentanyl and a drug that's 50 times more potent than fentanyl that's killing people. But that's what all the restriction is about. That's what all the information is about. When the president made it a national public health emergency, more than 2 million Americans have become dependent on and abuse prescription pain pills or other street drugs. So it didn't just begin in the last 7 years. It has started in the last 7 years. It's nearly 500% increased, according to Blue Cross and Blue Shield. So many people include it as a disease because it's an addiction. And addiction is defined as a chronic relapsing brain disease that's characterized by compulsive drug seeking. You've seen people who say they're an addict. You know, I don't have any use for them, they're an addict. Well, same way with being an alcoholic. That it is a disease, and there is a way to cure that disease, but you have to go through some uncomfortable parts to do that. So they are using every venue that we can think of, if they can get people to pay attention to it and understand how it functions and why you don't need it anymore. There was a new program out this year called 13 Reasons Why. Are you familiar with it, Paul?
No.
It was about 13 reasons. It was about the fictional story of a teenage girl named Hannah Baker who leaves behind 13 audio recorded message ending her life, editing her ending of her life. She addresses each recording in a permanent to a person who she says played a role in her decision to kill herself. Selena Gomez is an executive producer of the show, and they were very critical of the show because they thought even before the show debuted, some mental health experts noted that the show could choose health risks, could pose a health risk for certain young people who already had suicidal thoughts, but just months later they found that the show's premiere correlated with Google searches and tied to suicide awareness and prevention. So a lot of people wanted to know what that show was. I had never even heard of it, and but evidently people that are most socially adept than I am had. Another frequent question was, I can't imagine Googling this, but I guess maybe you could, is what causes the hiccups? They're involuntary contractions of the diaphragm, which is that muscle that separates your chest from your abdomen, and that you may get them from a large meal, alcoholic or carbonated drinks, or sudden excitement. I happen to get it. I've had a couple of cervical surgeries in the neck, and I don't have much saliva there. If I eat white meat, you never need to give me white turkey meat unless you cover it with gravy. Because, and same way with pork. I get the hiccups all the time. Mm-hmm. Another drug or another disease that was Googled a lot is what is lupus. This is an autoimmune disease in which the body's immune system attacks its own healthy cells and tissues instead of viruses and bacteria. And the reason this, again, socially I'm not in that scene, but Selena Gomez really had a kidney replaced because she had lupus. And, you know, I still have an ex-employee who moved to Southern California that worked for me 30 years ago that had lupus. And she still looks beautiful and still gets that rash on her and takes medication for the treatment, but you don't have to be, it doesn't have to be that severe. Selena had to get a kidney transplant due to her lupus. Other celebrities have been diagnosed with lupus: Toni Braxton, actress Kristen Johnson, singer-writer Seal. The name lupus means wolf in Latin. It has been attributed to probability thought that scars from the disease resembled those from a wolf's bite. Never been bitten by a wolf, so have you?
Never have.
So I'll never know.
Yeah.
One was why am I so tired? And I think this morning I'm running around like crazy, and Dad said, "You're getting weaker and weaker because of this." And I says, "I'm not weaker. I just fell down the stairs, or I fell up the stairs instead of down the stairs." She said, "Well, you don't have as much energy. When your body's fighting off a disease, or whether it's 6 ribs or the flu or whatever it is, it's spending all the effort in trying to heal your body. So you don't have as much energy left as what, and you're tired because of it." How long does the flu last? Well, we don't know. I mean, about 5 to 7 days, I guess, where you're completely out of the flu, so you don't have any symptoms at all. Probably 3 to 5 days of severe flu that you need to probably treat. How do you lower your cholesterol? Well, many kids who, it's the millennials and all those that are really on the internet more than anybody else, and we normally didn't have high cholesterol problems when we were young because we were very active physically. Today that isn't the way our society is, but you lower cholesterol by eating less fats and less animal fats. And if that doesn't work, of course, it's diet and exercise, diet and exercise, diet and exercise. If those don't work, you can go to medications called statins, which lower your bad cholesterol, your LDL. Your HDL is usually, if you're in danger, it's because your HDL is too low. It needs to be up higher. There isn't any really good medication to do that, but lots of reasons that you would have high cholesterol. So not so many that you would have low HDL. What causes high blood pressure? And that becomes a real complicated question, because the end result is the heart is having to work too hard to pump the blood through. That's what elevates your blood pressure. But the reason is, why is that happening? Is it because stress that's causing your heart to pump too quickly, that it's not filling up with oxygen, and you're getting an arrhythmia, or you get a high blood pressure because of it? Is the blood vessel constricted because of fats on the inside of it? So the diameter of the blood vessel is smaller, so the heart has to work harder to pump the blood through. If it's because of pressure on the outside, you use a diuretic. If it's because of pressure on the inside, you eat less fats, take medication to get rid of that high cholesterol. That also lowers your blood pressure. What is ADHD? We hear that all the time because it's becoming more and more prominent. It's a central nervous system condition called attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's when somebody, especially in adolescence and youth, can't concentrate. They're in school, they're doing very poorly because they go from one thing to the other. They can't focus on what's going on. So they have to be disciplined somewhat, and it isn't always a chemical you need. Many times it's because you haven't had a good discipline at home, or somebody who spent some time trying to find out what's wrong with you. So they take you to school, and they expect the school to cause the discipline. But it isn't their fault either many times, so you have to be on a chemical. And that chemical is usually a stimulant, like an amphetamine. And amphetamine is a diet medication to a lot of people, and it's a stimulant for people who have a certain disease that causes them to sleep all the time. But for a child, it allows them to focus. And miraculous events happen because they're able to at least look at a lesson and understand what they're reading and get some information out of it, and do a good job at trying to question what they're reading and get a benefit enough that they can take an exam. I've given this example many times. I did a study on amphetamines when I was in college, and it was an essay test, and it's not unusual for college students to take an amphetamine and stay up all night. Illegally, amphetamines. That's why they steal kids' Ritalin and those kind of medications many times, so they can take an entrance exam for a college course and be alert. But if you're taking a test where you are really writing an essay, and an essay is a paragraph or two about explaining a phenomenon that occurs, or explain how this procedure works within the system if you're in healthcare. You know, how do you lower your blood pressure by taking a beta blocker? When I took that test, I was just positive that I aced it. I did pass the test, but when I looked at my test, there were complete paragraphs that I left out that mentally I had processed in my mind and thought I had written down the answer, and hadn't. I just processed it in my mind quicker than I could have written it in handwriting. So there are, as we've talked about many times, there are side effects from these medications as well as benefits, and you have to do the risk versus benefit to find out whether or not it's a benefit to you. Okay, Monday's Christmas. We won't talk to you until after Christmas. And what we're hoping, Paul, is that we do what we did on Thanksgiving and have a wonderful time and not get stressed out, not get in trouble with our relatives that we haven't seen in 6 months, and we don't start talking about politics.
Okay.
And
tax plans. That just passed. I just saw it pop up. It passed the Congress. So.
Did it pass House?
Yeah. Now it's on its way to Trump.
So we're not going to talk about those things. When it comes to Christmas Day, we're going to open our presents and
eat our food.
Yep. Have a cocktail, a little eggnog, or
watch some football, or what do they got on? Basketball usually on Christmas, or I think the Raiders play on Christmas this year, though.
Do they?
Yeah, because it's Monday, so I think they played the Monday night game.
Well, so, we'll be watching it then.
Watch some sports or whatever. Watch that movie, A Christmas Story. 50 times in a row.
Is that the Jimmy Stewart one, or
no? That's the one with the little kid. You know, the one that they play like the marathon all day, Christmas Day.
The one where they're burglarizing the house, or no? That was.
That's the one where you're thinking of Home Alone. No, it's the one where the kid gets his tongue stuck to the pole.
Oh yeah.
And the dad wins the award, and it's a leg lamp, and that one.
I know I told this years ago, but one of my grandsons was we were camping out at the Little Bear thing or whatever it is out Yosemite out in on Cobb, and I had a grill that was a portable Coleman grill, and we and then a gas tank, a little one of those propane gas tanks. And he wanted to stick his tongue on that little propane gas tank.
When it was frozen.
And it was frozen. He screamed. It was early in the morning. I was cooking breakfast. He screamed like crazy. I said, I told you not to do that.
Oh, no.
The whole campground woke up. I wasn't a very popular guy.
Yeah.
I drove off and went to work, and
that's funny.
Ricky stuck there with his tongue on the propane gas.
The propane tank, yeah.
Grandma had to help him out. So, remember to get your pneumonia shot if you haven't gotten it, your flu shot if you haven't gotten it, your shingles shot if you haven't gotten it. I just saw a thing on the news last night about whooping cough. There's a whooping cough epidemic again. And this little newscaster on, I think it was Channel 2, was pregnant. And anytime you're pregnant, you have to get a new pertussis shot. So even if you just had a child 3 months ago and you're pregnant again, you need to get another. Every time you become pregnant, you have to have it. If you're a grandparent and you're going to see a small child in your family or somebody else's family, you need to get a pertussis shot. We'd like to remind you we're North Lake Medical Pharmacy with 2 locations for you at 5136 Hill Road East across from Sutter Lakeside Hospital. Call us there at 263-6192. And outside the Bruno Shop Smart at 347 Lakeport Boulevard, call us there at 263-1328. And Merry Christmas, everybody. Have a great weekend and a great Christmas.
We'll see everybody back here again next Wednesday at 10 a.m. for Health Talk right here on AM 1270, AM 96.5 FM. KXVX, Lakeport.